the Georgia election interference case against former President Donald Trump after she was accused of a conflict of interest in hiring a key prosecutor. A Cobb County judge is hearing arguments today in the divorce case of Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade and will also determine whether Willis must sit for a deposition in that case. Steve Harrigan has the latest from Atlanta.
The fight today is over divorce proceedings, whether or not they should be unsealed, and whether that district attorney, Fonnie Willis, should be forced to be deposed to give testimony in this divorce case. Another hearing coming up next month will look at whether the two behaved improperly and whether they improperly used taxpayer money to take vacations. Many are already beginning to say that the district attorney should step aside. We've already gotten a hint at what might be in those divorce proceedings. On Friday, lawyers for the estranged wife released bank statements that show Nathan Wade bought plane tickets for himself and Willis to go to Miami, to go to San Francisco, to take a Caribbean cruise, and to rent a hotel in Napa Valley, California.
A policy analyst is warning that diversity, equity, and inclusion will kill this country if Republicans do not intervene. John Schweppe of American Principles Project says what's happening for years on campus has spread to boardrooms and workplaces across the country.
We're finally seeing a backlash to DEI. But I think, the point of where we need to go with this is that it's not going to be enough to just oppose DEI. We have to get out there and root it out of our institutions. And certainly our government, our Republican politicians, Republican presidential candidates, this needs to be a priority, something that we actually do via the force of law where we can.
According to the Heritage Foundation, the average university has 3.4 people working to promote so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion for every 100 tenured or tenure-track faculty members. A Catholic bishop who called President Biden a fake Catholic and denied communion to Nancy Pelosi has received a coveted award. Charlie Butts reports.
Bishop Emeritus Joseph Strickland was removed as bishop in Tyler, Texas, because he was and is outspoken about living out the Bible in personal lives and in the church. He is very much pro-life. Frank Pavone, a priest for life, tells AFN.
Here's where I think it really rubs some church leaders the wrong way. It's about applying the gospel to public policy. We have got to create a nation that protects its youngest children. If we can't do that, then we don't have the foundation of a civilized society anymore.
And he says, like Strickland, the public needs to insert itself into public policy to correct a government that has spiraled off the moral beaten path. And Strickland had the courage to speak out.
The church needs to connect these dots. If the church doesn't speak into the world of politics, then when we gather in church, we are just engaged in wishful thinking. There's always the power of prayer, but it's like the Lord, when we pray to him, he picks us up and he thrusts us into the battle. He says, okay, I'm going to do my part. Now you do yours, and get out there and make a difference.
Bishop Emeritus Strickland boldly spoke criticism of the church, which led Pope Francis to remove him as bishop. He has been honored with this year's Pro-Life Recognition Award. I'm Charlie Butts.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Q.
Progressive elites in Hollywood, big tech, mainstream media, and higher academia are lying to our next generation. They want to convince our young people that America's biblical foundation is offensive, outdated, and must be overthrown. Your gift today will unleash AFA action to share the timeless truth of why protecting the biblical family is essential to the survival of the American Republic. You'll also get the free DVD and booklet set, Progressive Threat to the American Republic. Visit afaaction.net.
We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. Glad to have you with us on the program today. Walker Wildman here with you. The show each week is hosted by myself and Rick Green, America's Constitution coach. He and I both bring you the news of the week, the ongoings in our country, and why it matters to you, why it should matter to you and your family, and what you can do to make a difference. So that's our aim, and hence the name of the show, At the Core. You know, not a lot of fluff going on around here, not a lot of fluff. You might can tune into some shows and you get some feel-good fluff, but not on the core, not on the core. We aim to be a waster of no man's time. Try to not waste your time, bring you what's relevant, what's trending, what's important for you and our country. So that's what we do each week on the core. Hey, speaking about no fluff and all meat, which is actually a biblical passage about each of us as believers getting off of milk and on to the meat, the protein, that which builds you up. We are focusing on preborn this week. We hit on this some last week, but we want to hit on it again this week. And I talked extensively, actually, probably the whole first segment on Friday, about preborn and the work that they're doing. And I just got to tell you, number one, here at American Family Radio, we're not going to partner with ministries that, number one, aren't doing kingdom work. Of course, that's a prerequisite of even having a discussion about partnering with American Family Radio. But secondly, we want to partner with groups that are having maximum impact. Groups that are having maximum impact. And Preborn is one of those groups that is having currently and has had maximum impact in our nation. And so that's what Preborn is doing. They're providing free ultrasounds to women and babies. And of course, as I mentioned last week, the ultrasounds aren't just beneficial to the mom. Of course, they're not just beneficial to the baby. But think about all of the dads that come in there into the ultrasound room and they get to hear their child's heartbeat. This is a game changer. So it's not just about the mom, not just about the baby. We can't forget the dads out there. And many of these women go into these ultrasounds. For many of them, the pregnancy wasn't planned. It wasn't part of their plan. It's, of course, part of God's plan. But they go in fearful, not knowing what the future holds. What should I do? I didn't expect a child. But they hear the heartbeat, and over 80% of women who go in abortion-minded, hear the heartbeat, over 80% choose life. It's a game changer. And you can be a part of that today. $28, just to break down the numbers here. $28 provides one ultrasound. $140 provides 5, and the list goes on. The more you give, the more ultrasounds are able to be performed. But to break down the numbers for you, the donor, $28 provides 1, $140 provides 5, and you can do the math from there. $28 for one ultrasound. That's the number. Preborn's been at this for over 17 years. This isn't a young ministry. This isn't an inexperienced ministry. Dan Steiner and the whole team at Preborn are doing excellent work. And what better way to be a part of it than to donate and know that every time you give $28, you're providing an ultrasound and saving a baby in the womb. This is critical. This is important. And we want you to be a part of it. So call 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, or if you're a little more techie, you can go to afr.net, afr.net. Right there on the homepage, you'll see the donate button for this specific preborn campaign, and we would love for you to donate. Our goal this week, 4,500 babies. That's what we want to do. 4,500 ultrasounds, which equates to providing ultrasounds for 4,500 moms and babies in need. That's our goal for this week. So help us reach that goal, 4,500 babies. And you know what? Let's just don't meet the goal. Let's exceed it. And let's specifically have Dan Steiner and the team call us next week and say, you know what? When Walker talked about it on the core, we got a lot of calls. We got a lot of gifts that hour. Let's make that happen this hour. Once again, the number to call in and donate is 877-616-2396, 877-616-2396, or afr.net. And the way this works just on the back end is Preborn partners with local pregnancy resource centers and provides the machines. So these are machines underwritten by Preborn, but partnered with local ministries, local resource centers, local pregnancy resource centers. Preborn's coming in saying, look, you may have you have the personnel, you've got the mission, you've got the local support in your community with your churches and believers around the community, but we've got the machines. We're coming in here with the machines. This is their area of expertise, if you will, is the ultrasound machines. And this is just one of many examples of how God uses modern technology to change people's lives. Being able to see the baby, hear the heartbeat, it's a complete game changer for the mom, the baby, the dad, and any of the other family members that are around. So this is just one of a plethora of avenues that we are using here at American Family Radio to combat this culture of death. And there is no other way to accurately explain what is going on in America 2024. It is an utter, complete culture of death. And as the old saying is, there's nothing new under the sun. This is the case here. There have been examples rather, in Scripture, in Bible history, where some cultures just foster a culture of death. Some societies foster a culture of death. Think about the birth of Christ. Think about King Herod sending his troops around killing babies because his kingdom was at risk, he said. So we've got to fight back. We've got to do our part. Different times, but same wickedness attempting to prevail in our society and our culture. And we're called as believers to be salt and light, to be active, to be engaged, to be disciple makers. That's our job. One of the ways you can do that is through Preborn, 877-616-2396. That's the number, or AFR.net, AFR.net. And, I can't move on from this topic. If you listen to the show Friday, I spent the whole segment on it. This is a very passionate area of mine, the family. And what more fundamental thing for Satan to go after than the baby itself? Satan's been going after marriage, right? What is the definition of marriage, they say? But Satan's been also going after babies in the womb. Satan's motto on this is, let's just kill them before they're born. Why quabble about the definition of marriage? Why quabble about the definition of human sexuality? Why quabble about the Genesis account? What does it matter? Let's kill them in the womb, they say. This is satanic, folks. This is satanic. And the number of millions of lives that haven't even seen the light of day, literally, through abortion is sickening. And this is why the whole political discussion at times is warped. And I get it. Look, I get the political side of this. I'm in it every day. It was in Mississippi where we got the 15-week bill that ended up going to Supreme Court, and we ended up shaping the legal arguments in a manner that undermined Roe itself, which got it overturned. And there's always this debate amongst Christians. What do we do? Is a 15-week bill okay, or is that not enough? Do we go to a 0-week bill where every baby lives? What can withstand the court scrutiny? That's a viable discussion. That's a pragmatic discussion. What is most likely to succeed and withstand judicial scrutiny in America 2023, 2024? What is that? You have to have those discussions. But it doesn't change what the standard is. And that's what we can't lose sight on as we discuss how best to slowly chip away at the number of abortions in America, what we can't lose sight of is what is our standard? What is our starting position? Our starting position is the position of Scripture, that all babies ought to have the right to live. They're all created in the image of God, and they ought to have the right to live. That is our position. And where the laws and the policies land is it goes along with that discussion, but we must always agree on what our end game is. You know, the left and the Marxists and the God haters and the baby killers, sometimes it's hard to nail down what their end game is, you know? We end up speculating on what their end game is, and most of us are right most of the time on what their end game is based on the way they think. But it ought to be abundantly clear in this country and around the world what the Christian view of life is, as far as it being a zero compromise, all babies get to live position. There should be zero confusion on that. If the public were to ask, what does it mean to be pro-life as an evangelical Christian in 2024? Everyone should know that it means zero abortions. Well, what about rape and incest? No. I said zero abortions. And those arguments are complete distractions from talking about the fundamental right to life that babies have. We're on this whole topic of exceptions. Here's the reality. And specifically, I'm talking about rape and incest, which is the go-to zinger that they all use, and it gets you all stumbled up. The simple response is we're not, because simply based on the fact that the child was conceived in a unfortunate or sad or even sinful circumstance, we're not killing the baby because of that. That is the position. We're not killing the baby because the baby was conceived in sad, unfortunate, sinful, evil circumstances. That doesn't mean that we sacrifice the life of the child. That is the simple answer to this pro-death argument for rape and incest. Now, if we want to really get granular here, and we've had medical experts on before, we've had doctors on the show multiple times to talk about this argument for abortion that talks about the life of the mother, they say, the life of the mother. Okay, let's talk about that briefly. We got the music coming. A child tragically passing away because the doctor had to save the life of the mother and also attempt to save the life of the baby, and those two things can be done simultaneously. Folks, that is not by definition abortion. That is a child's life ending because they were preterm or some other extraordinary circumstance. But the goal of the physician should always be to attempt to save both the life of the mother and the life of the baby. If that is attempted, by definition, that is not an abortion. We'll be back in a few.
Martha, Martha, you are worried and bothered about so many things, but only one thing is necessary. For Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. After Jesus resurrected their brother, Lazarus, Martha and Mary hosted a dinner party in their Bethany home. You can imagine the excitement and the buzz that swirled through the town and the number of people who came because the rabbi had returned. Martha busied herself with preparations. Mary sat at Jesus' feet, basking in his teaching. Life's demands can easily consume our focus, but one thing is necessary, that we remain at Jesus' feet, anchored in his word.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
You know, it's true. Difficult times have a way of focusing us. We have to think about what matters most when it comes to our spending, our health care. This is why so many people are joining Medishare right now. Medishare is a trusted way to save up to 50% on your monthly healthcare costs. More than 400,000 people have already made the switch. It's pretty obvious why, too, especially now during this challenging season with healthcare costs and out-of-pocket expenses going up. Medishare can save you a lot of money. The typical family saves $500 a month. Medishare works, too. It's been around for 30 years. Members have shared more than $5 billion of each other's bills. There are different options to choose from to fit your budget. I'll give you the number here in a second, and if you call, you can get a price within 2 minutes. Maybe now is the perfect time to make the switch and start saving. Here you go. Call 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE.
How concerned are you when it comes to the president's ability to reach black voters? The president has an approval rating
Hey friends, it's Jessica Peck, Dr. Nurse Mama, as your 1-minute parenting coach. What word or phrase did your parents use often while you were growing up that you intentionally avoid yourself as a parent? I'm talking about things like, "What were you thinking?" or "Stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about," or the ultimate classic, "Because I said so." The power of our words is the most deadly weapon and the most protective force we have as parents if we use it well. I challenge you to ask your kids about your frequent words and phrases. If it's hurtful, give yourself grace and space. Kids are amazingly forgiving with a sincere apology. Affirm your growth and be kind and gracious to yourself as you unlearn and relearn. I'll see you on the Dr. Nurse Mama radio show right here on American Family Radio.
At the Core podcasts are available at AFR.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Core. Walker Wildman here with you on the program on this Monday edition. Good to be back in the studio. You know, much of the South was iced in last week. I made it to the studio a couple of days for some live shows, but I'm glad to be back in the saddle. A little bit of snow and ice is quite fun for those of us in the South, but once you get past day 3 or 4, it's time to get back to our routine. We are creatures of habit. Hey, before we jump to our next guest, I want to remind you of our preborn campaign that we talked about last segment. Go to AFR.net for more information on that and how you can donate. That's AFR.net. You know, there's men and women all around this country that are fighting for the truth or fighting for what's right in our nation to preserve our Judeo-Christian value system and the beacon of freedom and hope and liberty that America has become. And I want to introduce our next guest who is doing such. This is Alabama Secretary of State Wes Allen. He's on the line with us now to talk about some of the important work he's doing regarding elections. Secretary of State Allen, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Walker. I appreciate it. And please just call me Wes.
Wes, excellent. Thank you so much. Hey, Wes, let me ask you this. Once again, we're talking to Wes Allen. He's the Secretary of State in Alabama and the state of Alabama. The topic of election integrity and the overall topic of elections has been percolating in our culture for the last 2 to 3 years after what happened in 2020. As soon as you got in office, you've been on top of this thing. You've been looking into these databases that host a lot of our election information. So just give our audience kind of a backgrounder on some of the work that you've been honing in on as the Secretary of State there.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and I appreciate the work y'all are doing at American Family Radio, and thanks for having me on. Election integrity is important. You know, I campaigned for a year and a half, from 2021 all the way through 2022 last year during election year. I can tell you, I went to all 67 counties in Alabama, and, you know, we talked about our local experience when I was a probate judge in Pike County for almost a decade, and, of course, those are the chief elections officials in their particular counties. And so I know what it's like to run elections. And one thing at the top of everybody's mind was election integrity and security, as you mentioned. After what we saw in 2020 and the chaos and confusion that we saw and witnessed around the country in some blue states and some purple states, not so much in red states, but we saw what happened, and the people are concerned. And one of the things that I campaigned on was to make sure that we would withdraw Alabama, our state, from the Electronic Registration Information Center. And I made the promise to the people of Alabama that ending our state's relationship with ERIC organization would be my first official act as secretary. And I came off the stage on January the 16th, 2023. And after I took the oath and came in on this desk here and signed the letter to officially withdraw us and set us on a course to where we could control our data, personal information of all the residents and the registered voters of the state of Alabama for an Alabama-based solution that we know exactly where the information is and we know exactly where it's headed, and we own the server. We know where the server is, and so we are excited, and we went straight to work, and a lot of hard work went into that, and we launched the new system, the Alabama Voter Integrity Database, back in September of 2023.
Secretary of State West, this is a big deal, and a lot of voters, their eyes might glaze over. And what's the Secretary of State talking about? Eric. So for those who don't know, this is the Electronic Registration Information Center, as the Secretary of State Wes Allen here just explained, and there was a lot of mystery surrounding this database and who's in control of it, what goes on there, is it beneficial for each respective state? But Wes, tell us, when you first came into office, you actually did some serious digging into this database. You made a trip to D.C., et cetera. Tell us about just some of the surprises that you encountered as you began to look into the problems with this ERIC database.
Sure. So it was a 31-state group of states that went in together. And, I expressed concerns over a private organization like ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center, having access to the private data of Alabama citizens, including driver's license numbers, contact information, and then, of course, partial Social Security numbers of minors. And, ERIC required the participating states to send all that information on a monthly basis to this private organization, and providing the information of Alabama citizens, including underage minors, to an out-of-state organization, is very, very troubling to me and a lot of other people in the state. And, that's no longer a concern because those data uploads of that information from Alabama is over. And, of course, we made a trip to Washington, D.C. Back during February of last year, and I wanted to drop by and visit the home office of ERIC, the address that was publicly posted on their official website. And, of course, when I made my trip there and dropped to the street address, there was nobody there. And so that was another red flag, and just to make sure that, we made the right decision for Alabama. And, it was a data mining, in my opinion, proposition because one thing that ERIC did was it identified all those individuals who were eligible but unregistered to vote, and they did that through their driver's license information. And then it required those participating states to send out notices to let everybody know that, hey, we recognize that you're not registered to vote, get registered to vote. And I just didn't think that was the place for taxpayers to fund and for the state to be in that business. And so we set out on a course to develop a better way, our way, an Alabama-based solution.
Yeah, and I love that. It's one thing to complain about the problems going on in our society and even in government, but to actually propose viable solutions, and not just propose them, but in your case, implement them. So Alabama has set up their own, basically their own voter database. I know you have an acronym and a specific title for it, but tell us about that database and how you're actually working with other states to try to get them to either join your database or create their own.
Sure. Yeah. So we worked really hard, and it took, about 9 months, 9.5 months to get the thing off the ground and stood up. And, so many times conservatives or Republicans, are demonized because we just, are seen and put in a box like we just want to blow stuff up or tear things up. But I don't think that's the right approach. We want to build stuff, and we want to find solutions to problems. And, voter file maintenance is the foundation for election integrity, and we recognize that. And AVID, our Alabama Voter Integrity Database, is a 4-prong attack to making sure we take care of our voter file maintenance in Alabama. Number one is our cooperative agreement with the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency. And so if Walker moves out of the state of Alabama and moves to, let's just say, Missouri or Texas or wherever, and gets another driver's license in that new state, that other state alerts Alabama to say, hey, this person, John Doe, has gained a driver's license in our state. And so Alabama will cancel their driver's license in Alabama. We get that information and send them a postcard, a letter to say, hey, we've received information that you may have moved. Please remove yourself off the voter rolls. If that's the case, or if we've made a mistake, please let us know that as well. So that's been a tremendous asset to us. We've recognized and saw over 8,500 individuals that have moved out of state and gotten driver's license in another state. The other thing that you just mentioned was our state partnerships, and we thought it was important to develop memorandums of understanding, bilateral agreements with our surrounding states, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi. We've also got Arkansas signed up as well, and we've already begun the data exchange between us and Tennessee. We found that over 8,000 individuals have registered to vote in Tennessee and also registered to vote in Alabama. So we're working that data as well. The third prong in AVID is the national change of address file, where John Doe moves out of state from Alabama and moves to another state. And normally what they'll do is they'll tell the Postal Service to say, hey, please forward my Alabama-based mail to my new address, wherever that may be. And we've recognized and found over 30,000 active registered voters who've done that. And so we're working that data as well to maintain clean voter file maintenance. And then the last portion is the Social Security Death Index, which is kept by the Social Security Administration. And so when someone moves or travels out of state, unfortunately, they may pass away sometimes. And we haven't always had that information. So if a guy or lady goes on a trip to Montana and they pass away, we will have access to that information. And that, like I said, hasn't always been the case. And it's been a great year. We've done a lot of really, really good things, working close with our partners at the Board of Registrars in every county to make sure our voter file maintenance is robust and making sure we have clean and accurate voter rolls.
Secretary of State Allen, once again, we're talking to Wes Allen. He's the Secretary of State in the state of Alabama. We're talking about his important election integrity initiative that he's been heading up the last year or two in Alabama. Wes, this is, when I hear you talk, the first word that comes to mind is competency. and for a lot of folks, it's like, to hear you talk about this, it's like, wow, he's actually doing stuff that makes sense, and it's practical, and it's really not convoluted or complex, and it gets the job done. And the fact that there are people in this country, although it probably the Marxists and the Democrats, that when you talk about doing these common sense things that are actually within the direct purview of your office, the fact that people would oppose that is quite astonishing. It's hard in America in 2024 to fathom that people would be opposed to having clean voter rolls and to having things done with integrity. But unfortunately, there are some in that crowd. But I want to give you last word on the importance of this effort that you're working on in Alabama, and maybe some encouragement for other states who may be thinking about the same thing.
Well, Walker, again, thank you for allowing me a little bit of time today to talk about something that's very, very important. And as I travel around the state, continue to travel around the state of Alabama and to take our message straight to the voters, because it's important that they hear from us and that they know what we're doing and that we're transparent and open about it. And, listen, I'm a guy that served in the Alabama House of Representatives and that passed 2 voter integrity bills and pass those into law. And I believe in election day. I don't believe in election month. I don't believe in automatic voter registration. I don't believe in having a whole month to vote. All these things that you see the left and the folks on the left want to institute that really introduces chaos and confusion. And we want to make sure we have an orderly fashion, but at the same time, we want everybody that wants to be registered to vote to be registered to vote. We want everybody to have an opportunity to go out and cast their vote, and it's going to count. And in Alabama, we use paper ballots. Our voting tabulators can never be connected to the internet. We just passed 2 laws to make sure that is state statute. And at the end of the night, on election night, in Alabama, you're going to know who wins and loses. And we're very, very proud of that.
Amen. Hey, once again, we've been talking to the Alabama Secretary of State, Wes Allen. He's been on the program with us. Hey, Wes, thanks so much for coming on, telling us what you're doing in Alabama, and hopefully spurring on other states to do the same.
Well, I certainly appreciate it, Walker. Y'all have a great day. Be blessed.
All right. Thank you so much. Once again, that's Wes Allen. He's the Secretary of State in the state of Alabama, a neighboring state here to Mississippi. But what he's talking about there is his work on election integrity, cleaning up the voter rolls, setting in place, in motion, a system that is tried, tested, and true. And he's also partnering with other states as well on this initiative. So your state could join basically the compact or the cooperative on this matter. And, I mean, you talk about just common sense stuff. I mean, this is not, this ain't rocket science, to repeat the old saying. This is no-brainer. This is a no-brainer, if you will, to do this and to do it expeditiously in the name of protecting the votes in Alabama, and this can be done all around the country. And this is what it's going to take, folks. This is what it's going to take. It's going to take states working together. That's why our founders put in place the 10th Amendment. We've got a rogue federal government, a rogue federal bureaucracy. In many cases, we've got a rogue court system not adherent to the Constitution, original intent. And we scratch our heads and we go, where do we go now? What is the solution? Can I tell you 10th Amendment? Did you hear me say 10th Amendment? That is the solution, folks. We ought to be working on the ground in Washington, D.C., and we are. We should be working on our federal judiciary, and we are. But we also shouldn't be ignoring this thing called the 10th Amendment, especially on elections. I mean, elections are within the purview of states, 100%, specifically the Secretary of State's office. I mean, read the federal statutes on this, read the Constitution on this. The only thing that the federal government does and the Constitution does is it says we're going to have elections, and we're going to have them every few years, and it gives out the specific years numbers. Every other year, every 2 years for U.S. House of Representatives, every 6 years for the U.S. Senate, every 4 years for president. That's it. That's it. And then it's up to states to handle the rest. You guys handle it. Send us the electoral votes when you're done with them, and Congress will certify them. So elections are 100% within the purview of the states. And if you're frustrated about election integrity, well, there's this office in your state called Secretary of State. And you ought to be getting people elected to the Secretary of State position that will do the right thing on this. Also, the office of Attorney General. Folks, if we can capture the offices of Attorney General and Secretary of State in these battleground states of Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Michigan, and the likes, if we can put people like the gentleman I just talked to, Alabama Secretary of State Wes Allen, in those offices around the country, folks, we can start to clean this stuff up. There is a path forward here. There is a viable path forward here to clean up this mess of our elections. And the two leading offices to take care of this is the Secretary of State and the Attorney General in each of these respective states. That is the path forward. If you care about election integrity, there you go. There's your marching orders. We'll be back in a few.
The loss of a child through abortion, miscarriage, or stillbirth affects the emotional health of families. Feelings of anger, sadness, and regret can be overwhelming. There is hope and healing in the aftermath of a reproductive loss. Call the International Helpline at 866-482-LIFE to talk with someone who has been where you are and healed to help others. Your call is confidential. 866-482-LIFE.
AFR programming is now available on Alexa.
You're joking, right?
Nope, not joking.
Seriously?
Yep, this is not a drill.
Wait a minute. No way.
There's a way. The Alexa way. So if you just happen to miss your favorite shows, no worries. You can now listen to each podcast with Alexa. It's simple and it's free. Just visit afr.net/apps and click Alexa. We're not joking.
You know, folks, without George Washington, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. Hello, I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. George Washington, otherwise known as General Washington during the Revolutionary War, the War for Independence, later to become President Washington, our first president of the United States, and the father of our country, George Washington. We're going to see his home in June and September on our Spiritual Heritage Tours. Mount Vernon will be one of our stops on our tour. So if you want to go with us to D.C. and see all the sights of our nation's capital, also our trip to Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, if you want to go with us, go to the website spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com. The itinerary, the cost, everything is there for you to check it out and join us on one of our 2024 tours.
In 2007, when Dan Steiner, president of Preborn, cried out to God, "What can I do for you?" the answer came loud and clear.
I sense God's broken heart over the issue of abortion. You see, he sees every little baby that's being formed in the mother's womb, and it breaks his heart to see when the lifetime that he has planned for them is taken from them violently so often. But if we can get a mom into one of our clinics and show her her baby, and she has that close encounter of the best kind in her womb, she will choose life.
Preborn has rescued over 280,000 babies' lives through ultrasound. Would you join Preborn and AFR today and help rescue 4,500 babies this week? One ultrasound session costs $28. To donate, please go to afr.net. That's afr.net. Or call 877-616-2396. 877-616-2396.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Walker Wildman.
Welcome back to The Core. Walker Wildman here with you. The show is hosted each week by Rick Green and myself. Walker Wildman here with you. Glad to be with you today on the program. This is our Monday edition live of The Core. Had some great guests thus far, and we got another one coming up here. I want to introduce a longtime friend of the ministry and a former governor of the state of Mississippi, excellent governor in the state of Mississippi, Governor Phil Bryant. He's on with us now. Hey, Governor Bryant, glad to have you back on
Walker,
AFR.
how are you? Oh, it's so good to hear, and I just have to mention the passing of Don Wildman. What a legend. Brother Wildman and I worked together back in the 90s when maybe it wasn't so cool to go out and fight for the right to life then, and all of trying to save America from Hollywood, from all of the secular media damage that was going on. I just love to come to Tupelo and visit with him and go back into his little office. There, it seemed like he had a little metal desk and a metal chair that was often broken. And we would read these stories about how this powerful man from Tupelo, Mississippi was affecting the movie industry. And I used to smile, and he did too. He would laugh about it, where in reality he was a preacher and follower of Jesus from Tupelo, Mississippi.
Amen.
But he had a mission that changed the world, and God bless him. And we should long remember Don Wildman and what he has done for us all.
Amen. Praise God. Thank you for those kind words. And you and I, we're carrying on the legacy of Don Wildman and the movement here today. Hey, Governor Bryant, this primary season with the Republicans is thankfully coming to an end, at least hopefully in the next few days or weeks, with former President Trump as the leader of the pack, if you will, with the vast majority of Republican voters behind him. So let's just operate under the assumption that we've got a Trump v. Biden November 2024, and the Biden presidency, as you know, has been an unmitigated disaster on every front. Give our audience some words of encouragement. Tell us your thoughts on this election cycle.
Well, I think that's exactly what the American people know, from the border to inflation to energy to foreign affairs. They have failed. The Biden administration has failed at everything. And it's not getting better, and in fact is getting worse as we see them trying to force Israel into a ceasefire. And thousands of their supporters, what were the Biden supporters, taking to the streets and basically calling for the destruction of Israel. In what world would we imagine that America and serious people, you might call them serious, who are at universities and head of universities, presidents of universities that are agreeing with this? So I think the American people don't like anything they have seen. COVID will not be an opportunity for them to go and gather ballots and put them into boxes on the end of every street corner, which, of course, had a dramatic effect on the last election. I think you see an energized Donald J. Trump who is now trying to, I don't want to say that he's a softer, gentler Donald Trump, but he understands he needs to bring this country together. As you saw after the Iowa caucus, where he reached out to the others that were involved and was very conciliatory towards his Republican opposition. I think you're going to see a focused Donald Trump that delivers a message that America wants to hear. And I still believe the American people are in charge. They are still the sovereigns, and they will decide, and I believe they're going to decide that Donald J. Trump can do it a lot better for America than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
You know, Governor Bryant, this is a I try not to overstate things, and I shy away from the saying that's used every election cycle. This is the most important election of our lifetime. But I will say, to not throw too much shade on that, some people, and I'll lean into this camp sometimes, view this 2024 is like the last hoorah, one of the last battles on this idea of the American experiment, freedom, liberty, capitalism, the American dream. And the reason I lean into that camp is because of the threat of the Marxists. I mean, they are ever more marching on our freedoms.
That's
so
right.
Am I overstating it, or do you lean that direction?
Not at all, Walker. I mean, I was listening to Max Lucado recently, a preacher who I love to hear, and there are serious people that are talking about whether or not this would be the end of times. And where David Jeremiah, others are seeing these steps that are being taken, and you're absolutely right. Not only are the Marxists now in charge of the government of the United States of America, they're not shy about it. They're not trying to hide it. They're openly saying these things, and things that we could never imagine would happen in this world, much less on the streets and in the universities and elementary schools of America. When you can't tell a young man whether he's a boy or a girl, what bathroom to use, but also there is discussion in California as if you don't transgender your child, if you don't let your 12-year-old child decide that he wants to be a girl and let him transgender to that, the state would take your child away from you. There's no more of a communist element than the state taking your children and transforming them into another being, if you will. And somehow we have been made, those of us that are followers of Jesus, those of us that believe in America and the individual liberties that we always were afforded, somehow now we are the enemy. As you see, they use the term MAGA, Make America Great Again, as a term as this almost, if you voted for Donald Trump or you support the concept of making America great again, you're a white supremacist. Somehow you're evil. You're a domestic terrorist. You need to be investigated by the FBI and jailed.
Yeah.
So this is the greatest threat we have ever faced since the Civil War. The last time that anyone tried to take a man off the ballot that was running for president of the United States was Abraham Lincoln. And we see how that came
founder of the Republican Party. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Fascinating
So
how history...
We're not exaggerating this at all. And I think we saw in Iowa where the people in the Republican primaries are feeling. Now, I know Nikki Haley well. I served with her as governor in some of the last years of her term in South Carolina. I have been around her and her husband, wonderful folks, just a lovely family. Obviously, Governor DeSantis and I served together in some of the last years of my term while he was governor of Florida. A great leader, another wonderful family, served this nation with honor. But it is not their time. It is a time, I believe, for a fighter that on occasion may have to do things that we are a little uncomfortable with. That has to be done because of the vicious attacks that are going on from the government, from the weaponization, from the dual system of justice, from the media that have not only attacked Donald J. Trump, but anybody that's associated with them. And I think the American people have said enough. Yeah. We want him back.
Absolutely. That's definitely the voice of a lot of Americans out there, and they feel very, very strongly about it. And they didn't like how 2020 was handled. Absolutely left a bad taste in their mouth, rightfully so. Hey, Governor Phil Bryant, former governor of Mississippi, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your thoughts.
Well, God bless y'all all. Thank you for what you're doing.
Absolutely, Governor. Thank you so much. That's Governor Phil Bryant, former governor in the state of Mississippi, excellent friend of the ministry, a longtime ally in our movement, friend of my grandfather, Don Wildman, and those are his opinions and his views about this election we have coming up in November. And, of course, we don't endorse candidates here on the program for a variety of reasons, legal and otherwise, but when we talk about policies, when we talk about worldview, when we talk about, the implications of a Biden or Trump presidency, anyone who cares about preserving this nation and just continuing the fight back against this constant overreach, constant, assault on American values that is coming from Washington, D.C. and around the country and all the institutions, this election is one for the books, and that's not an understatement. As you can see, all of the predictions that my grandfather and Jerry Falwell Sr. and all the thought leaders and the evangelical leaders of our time that really created this movement that is the conservative movement, many of them warned us, folks. We can't say we weren't warned. The Marxist God haters have been advancing, and we've been sounding the alarm for 40 years here at American Family Association. And we've been called crazy. You guys are crazy. That'll never happen, they said. We should write a book titled, They Said That'll Never Happen. And, Bobby, that's jot a note down.
That's a good call. I like that title. Yeah.
Yeah, they said it would never happen. They said we were crazy. And to prove to you how disrespectful, let's just use a more cordial term, the other side is, the Marxist. Vice President Kamala Harris went on The View the other day, and she said she was scared. I'm scared of them, talking about Republican voters. I'm scared of them. Well, you know what I'm scared of? And then once again, these folks rely heavily on fear. You know what I'm scared of? I'm scared of waking up in 40 years, Lord willing, and I look around, and this country's not anything like it was. The whole Bill of Rights, whitewashed. Constitution, who needs that? American dream, I don't know what you're talking about. Parental rights, I've never heard of that. That's what scares me. And see, they can fearmonger. They can throw out the labels. They can control the media. By the way, a recent panel at the World Economic Forum, which is the epitome of the gathering of the elites, even though some Republicans go to that, it is the gathering of the elites, no doubt. And they'll even say that. You talk about self-fulfilling prophecy. We blame a lot of what's going on the powerful elites, which that's part truth there. And then they gather and say that they're the powerful elites, and they propose all the horrendous, dumb ideas that we all say the powerful elites want to do to us. They talk about how great they are and how great these Marxist ideas are. And then when we say that they're doing that, they call us conspiracy theorists. You guys are making that up. We don't want central bank digital currency, even though we had a whole panel on central bank digital currency at the World Economic Forum. I mean, do you think we're dumb? I think they do. But nonetheless, Vice President Harris said, I'm scared. They make me scared. Well, I'm scared of the massive government that you guys have created in Washington that hates everything that I believe in as an American. That is legit. That is a legit reason to be intimidated and scared. Not fearful, though. The only fear we should have is the fear of the Lord. But this election and what's going on in our country, and we folks, you talk about having passion. One thing that we've got to do is we got to have passion and vigor every election and with everything we do. And not just president, school board, mayor, city council, county supervisor, and the list goes on. And the low-hanging fruit here is the number of people that believe like I do. They're probably wanting to give me a high five right now because I'm speaking for them. But they're not voting. This is low-hanging fruit, folks. This whole status quo of 50% of Christians sitting at the house on election day is completely unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. It's one thing for our country to be taken over by the Marxists and the God haters. And we look back at how we got here, and 100% of Christians were at the ballot box every single time it opened, but we were just outnumbered. But I don't believe that to be the case, folks. We've got to be involved. We've got to be engaged. Let that be your challenge for 2024.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.